Welcome back to Journey Map, the Craft&Crew podcast, where we dive deep into the leading minds behind the world's top creative agencies and industry experts. My name is Dave Hale, and today I'm joined by special guest Simon Forster, founder and executive director of Robot Food. In this episode, we discuss Simon's entrepreneurial journey, his experience building a thriving agency outside of Tier 1 markets, and the relationship between team empowerment and strategic growth. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and thank you for taking this journey with us today. Simon Forster, founder and executive creative director of Robot Food. Welcome to Journey Map.
Hi.
In this show, we dive into your history, where you started from and how you got to where you are now. Well, today, where you are, you're joining me from Leeds in the UK. But I think some research on our end dug up that you were actually born in the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born upstate New York, but didn't live there too long. I think I was 3 months old when my parents moved to London, and they're British, so I did get a passport out of it, which is pretty handy.
And so, what was it that you said your parents are British? So I'm assuming they were in the U.S. for work, and then just after you showed up on the scene, they said we're going to go back. Were you the first child born? Second, third, where are you at in that pecking order?
No, I was second. So my brother's about 18 months older than me, but yeah, still doesn't have much of a US accent.
Yeah, no. And so the decision to move back to the UK, what do you think was the core driver for them? Was it lifestyle, work opportunity? Like what was it?
Do you know, I really don't know. I probably should find out. I think it's just, having family around when you're raising kids. So I think they spent about 8 years over in the States.
Well, it makes sense. Obviously I was trying to dig at some of this kind of like entrepreneurial spirit. I'm always fascinated from people who are willing to move around the world for whatever the reasons are. My wife and it's pretty funny. We travel actually pretty often, take advantage of our fully remote workforce and business model we've built, and love to kind of just, work from wherever we can, explore the world, work from either day or night, but get those experiences. Yet the one thing we seemingly are never willing to commit to is actually like just moving to somewhere else. So I'm really drawn to, and part of what I like actually asking, whether we're in these interviews or not, is just asking people who have made moves like that, how it was, why, what got them over. Because I like to think myself as a pretty big explorer. Anyway, so, but, it'd be a good conversation for you to have with them. It would be like a good...
I love travel as well. And I love being in new places, meeting new people. And I guess I've never really understood where my roots are because, I was born in New York State, grew up in London, but then I moved to the north of England when I was kind of early teens. So, and then settled here, and that's where Robot Food is based in Leeds. And I don't know, I guess when you have a team of 20 odd people based in an area, that in a sense you kind of feel like you're trapped, like you are then based in that area. Luckily, I still get to travel. It's something I've considered a lot recently because I guess I could have gone anywhere and done anything. And it's funny because a lot of people go where the biggest opportunity and the biggest a lot of people go where the people are to employ and where the network is to raise off. And I've always kind of kept my business, founded it myself, funded it myself, and grew very steadily and gradually without taking those bold kind of relocate and chase the money.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this for a second in terms of your desire to setting up and establishing of the agency in Leeds. So much like myself, we're based in Ottawa, Canada. Obviously, the big markets here would be Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, but even Toronto and Montreal are an easy drive from where I currently live. And could have chosen to move to those places, but almost intentionally didn't. So for yourself, why be it set up in Leeds versus London?
Well, we actually set up in a small town called Harrogate, and then ended up employing people from Leeds. So I was like, okay, maybe we need to move into Leeds. But Leeds is a cool city. It's kind of the third city, I think, in England as far as size, and it's kind of second to London as far as finance. There's quite a lot going on here creatively. There's a lot going on in media. But in our specialist field, we're fairly unique. There's quite a few agencies that do kind of more volume play creative for retailers that happen to be based around here and stuff. But as far as that kind of highly creative, brand strategy and branding work, we're fairly unique, which has its advantages and disadvantages. I guess if you're based in central London, you are one of many doing the same thing, tapping into the same pool of talent, and because of it, I think the average tenure in London is like 1.7 years in agency
Yeah.
life before somebody moves on to the next role. There's a lot of career climbing, whereas we've really focused, I guess because we haven't moved to with a strategy of let's grow, let's raise, let's do this fast and at volume. It's been a more organic, steady growth, attracting the right people who thankfully we've kept, and they're a big part of our team and our journey. So Martin, who was the very first employee who started as a designer, is now one of the creative directors, and he's on the senior leadership team, and he's still kind of my right hand man as we continue to grow.
Maybe this is the same experience you've had. Part of what I have enjoyed about being in a, let's call it a tier two market here in Canada anyway, and not even on the map in terms of any marketing or advertising or digital services globally. So it's that it's always forced us from day one to look beyond the walls of the market that we're in. I think it's been a huge benefit, and we were building that skill and that culture from, we launched in 2010. So between 2010 and 2020, like if you want to do any work of meaning, like we're always working for brands or companies in Toronto or in New York City, or other places in the US. It was just always very natural for us that if you want, because Ottawa is also a government town, so it's unless you want to work for NGOs, nonprofit. Not that there's anything wrong with that work, and it's deeply meaningful. But if you want to work with some of the biggest brands in the world, they're not based here. So we've always had to look elsewhere, and that's one of the things that I've found is just from like going back to almost that explorer spirit. You have to look beyond the walls of the market if you want to find those really unique, amazing opportunities. And then, as what I'm hearing you say is, I've found that it's like, well, then we get to be the place that local talent is like, well, if I want to do cool and interesting work for the types of companies like that, well, there aren't any here. So, well, this agency is the one that is doing that kind of thing. It's probably stunted our growth, honestly. We'd probably be much bigger if we just worked with more local companies, but my ego is too big, so it takes over, and I'm just like, I want to do this like kind of notable, meaningful work. But have you experienced something similar in terms of like by being in that non-tier one market? Are you like the big fish in the slightly smaller pond?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I would say that most of our clients don't really know where we're based. We are seen as global, and certainly that was absolutely escalated by COVID. There was a real kind of issue over agency location before COVID, and even with UK clients, there would be some companies based within the kind of M25 commuter belt that would be like, is it a problem that you're based in Leeds? And we're like, well, we can be here at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. Is it a problem for you? Because, just being based in Brighton, in the south of England, it's close in proximity to London, but it would take just the same amount of time to get in. So it's never been an issue for us. It was an issue for clients. That totally got removed by COVID, and that was the time when we became truly global. And I think it's so rare now to be asked, "Where are you based?" I just don't think it's a thing. And I think that's from a client point of view. From a team and kind of company makeup point of view, I guess I didn't understand the way business worked when I set up the agency. It really was just me and a credit card and just wanting to do something creative with really small ambitions. And I think a lot of agencies are set up by people who are ex-agency, and they use their previous experience and network to kind of hit the ground running from day one, take on a big team of big hitters and obviously often raise finance to do that. And I guess because of that, you've got to grow to scale because you might be giving away equity. Whereas, we're a relatively small business considering the kind of scale of size of clients that we have globally. But we get to concentrate on just the highly creative stuff, none of the volume play. And ultimately, it sharpens the thinking because you're not going to get noticed for your name, background, or location. So the work better say something about you. It's always been about the quality of the work.
Yeah. Well, so much of that resonates. I often say that the jury is still out on whether. So I also founded the agency with no agency experience, and so to me the jury is out on, was that a great decision or a terrible decision? Like, on the one hand, I think we probably operated for the first 4 years truly not knowing what we were doing, whereas we probably could have condensed that 4 year MBA into 4 months if we had had some previous experience going in. And then the flip side of it is I think we operate the business with no preconceived notions on how it's supposed to be done, and we've figured everything out for ourselves. And there are some best practices, but other things I think are our own best practices in terms of how they operate. And so yeah, it's been someday I'm sure I'll figure out whether it was a smart idea or a bad one, but for now it is what it is.
I think there's negatives and positives. It's kind of, but the big positive is figuring stuff out by yourself and not taking a playbook. That's where the reward comes from, isn't it? So
Yeah. Well, it's certainly the entrepreneurial path to take, of which clearly you have done, and we're going to get to another thing that we share, which is seemingly having way too many job titles and projects on the go at the same time. But let's go back. So, you do your college at the Harrogate College of Art and Design. So you are a designer by trade, and is that a fair sentiment, or
I
how
would
do you identify?
I would say when I was doing art and design, the emphasis was art and design was conceptual. So yeah, I, I still can't really operate a Mac. So I am a creative, but yeah, I'm not a designer.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Well, I identify the same way. Let's put it that way. So no one wants me designing anything, but it's like, the music producer Rick Rubin. Have you ever seen or any of the documentaries with him? And so it's just like he actually does not. He's not a musician, but like the ability to listen and give direction and feedback that is like brilliant is like, yeah. I like to think of myself as the very low rent Rick Rubin is the the way I put it. Anyway, okay, so you graduate out of that program. It's the mid 90s. At some point, this brand 24/7 that you get involved with, and so you basically took this California sports and fashion brand
Yeah.
and took it over in the UK. Is that a fair way of putting
20
it?
24/7 was the name of my company. So I went to go snowboarding in California just because I could, because I had a passport. So I read a book called The Universal Snowboard Guide, and it said that Squaw Valley was the best ski resort in the world for snowboarding. So I was like, right, I'm going to go there. I'd done a few lessons on plastic slopes in England, and headed for the hills. And while I was there, I saw a surf skate kind of lifestyle brand that was called Counterculture, and it really resonated with me as an angry little alternative punk. And they were just setting up in Europe. I contacted them and ended up going out to France to meet the new sales manager, and they were just setting up. And I took that brand on. It was a pretty cool brand. It was started with a $4,000 loan from Joey Ramone, and it was kind of very similar to like Volcom. It was early days of that kind of punk skate surf thing. And yeah, I did really well with it. I was just like visiting stores, so amped on what I was doing. I went out and bought a car and a computer, and I'd never used a computer. I'd never driven a car. Like, kept pranging the car. Like,
Never been snowboarding, never used a computer, never driven a car, had never
well,
started a business. Yeah.
yeah, but I just thought it would be fun, and ultimately because of my passion for the sports and the lifestyle, it kind of. I think I visited 48 stores the first kind of selling season, and I sold into 46 of them. So, um, yeah, and in the UK, it was a relatively small brand, but in the UK, it was kind of first few years, it was kind of the size of Volcom, and it was doing well, and had a really good team of skaters and ambassadors that I pulled together. It wasn't just the sales; it was all of the the managing a brand. I learned a lot about business from doing that.
This is about a 5-year run, and then you'd go on to Fox Racing as the UK sportswear manager, seemingly with a pretty big responsibility. But why? If things were going so well 24/7, why kind of shift gears?
Yeah, the market kind of imploded. I think it did globally, but certainly in the UK, there were way too many brands for the amount of people that were coming into lifestyle sports. You know, it's the kind of time when Adidas and Helly Hansen and everyone was getting involved in snowboarding and stuff. And I think counterculture ended up going bust. Owed me a load of money at the time. I was doing electric eyewear as well. For anyone who comes from that background, they'll know that brand. It's pretty cool. And yeah, I ended up taking a job with Fox because it was kind of a big existing corporate entity and I could transfer some of my skills, but I didn't enjoy working for somebody else. I really didn't like the atmosphere in that business at that time. I think there was some issues with some of the management, and yeah, it just didn't feel like a nice place to be working. So I decided to, yeah, I think quit my job there, and went and did another snowboard season to figure out what to do with my life. I think my email address at the time was quityourjobandcomeriding@hotmail.com. Put my house
Apropos.
up for sale, and yeah, went off to work out what my next move was.
Robot Food. Was this always the name from day one?
Yeah, it was. Robot Food came about because I just wanted to do something creative. And it was a time when I could reflect and think, what do I want to spend my time doing? And I knew I was skilled at blagging, but you know, it's quite broad when you run your own business doing kind of sales and marketing. You know, what really is your skill set? And I didn't know, but I knew that I wanted to do something creative. So I got chatting with an old friend from art college, and he had kind of gone down an FMCG, you know, CPG design route and worked at an agency that still exists in Leeds, where we're based. And he wasn't happy there at the time. That I was like, you know, fuck it, let's start our own creative agency.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, I was basically paying both of our tiny salaries on my credit card and trying to drum up business at the same time in the early days. And we had really kind of, yeah, mediocre outlook. You know, I think the big ambition was to eventually convert my garage and turn it into a little studio. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was as far as the ambition went. I just would have been happy to make a living doing something creative.
So how long, from founding 2009, what was the moment where you felt, here in Canada, our version of Sky Sports is called TSN, and they call it the TSN turning point, like, you know, the part of the match or part of the game where like the energy shifted and it was like, oh, now that team's going to win. So what was like the TSN turning point for Robot Food? Do you remember the year, the context, the client, the project, the hire? What was it that was like you woke up one morning and said, well, shit, I think we're I think we're going to be okay and this is going to work?
I just remember it happened quite quickly. It happened, I guess it's a series of small events. I mentioned Martin earlier. He's one of our creative directors. And I remember in an interview, he said he didn't want to go to London. He wanted to stay up north. But he said, you know, there isn't the options. So he was like, you know, I'm going to make us famous. And I was like, cool, welcome on board.
So,
Um,
quite the pitch.
and um, and then we ended up just by chance getting a gig with one of the big kind of consumer brands. It's a biscuit brand called Jammy Dodgers. And just by a chance conversation of speaking to their brand manager, we were kind of working for this kind of small biscuit manufacturer that were producing some product for them under license. And just she ended up showing me a load of work that she was working with some big global names on a reposition of the Jammy Dodgers brand. And she showed me some of the concepts. And I was like, none of this is your brand. It doesn't feel right. It's all stretching too far down a kind of health route or traditional route, or, you know, your brand is this, it's rooted in this. And that got her really excited. And she was like, well, show me what that would look like then. So she literally gave us a week and we, you know, we put in some long hours, came up with a cool concept, just one concept, and went back and literally sold it to Burton's Biscuits, who at the time were this massive biscuit producer.
Yeah. So paying yourself on your credit card, ambitions of being in the garage, and then you get this opportunity. What was the after that, following that? Was it like we got to do this again? Was it leveraging that case study to get more of the same? Like what happened as a result of that opportunity?
We just PR'd ourselves. We just got in Design Press. There was a publication called Design Week. It's come about again, but it's just in digital format. But it was like a weekly kind of design paper. And I remember one year we must have been in Design Week at least 13 or 14 times, because we were just prolific at creating concepts and PRing them as if they were real, just to get as much exposure as possible. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of been at the core of what we're about. If you are a true entrepreneur, I think entrepreneurship is just about making stuff happen. It's all very good and well coming up with an idea, but everyone comes up with ideas. And what an entrepreneur can do is actually turn that into reality. And it doesn't matter. You're not phased if you've got the experience or haven't. So something we've always done at Robot Food is come up with concepts and talk about them as if they're real. And, one of the very early ones, it's quite funny now because we're working with Sarson's vinegar. It's an old brand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of our very early pieces of work was a concept for spray vinegar for Sarson's. And now we're working on that brand.
Yeah. It's like a little manifestation.
Yeah. And I do kind of believe in that. Certainly luck is something that opportunities come along. It's just whether you've got the balls to grab hold of them and give it a go.
It's funny you said, entrepreneurship is just about execution. Because everyone has ideas. I kind of put it into three. It's almost like a three-sided Venn for me, which is you have to have ideas, you have to take the first step, and you have to execute. And to me, it's actually the first step piece, which is the jumping into the unknown, that is the thing most people can't do. Actually,
yeah.
I actually think there's lots of people who can execute. It's why we are able to hire people. It's why you're able to find, I have a great team that I'm surrounded by, where I come forward and I was like, hey, guess what? I had this idea. I took the step. Now we're fucked unless you guys execute. And I think there's lots, I agree, but I think one thing that's clearly obvious about you is just there's maybe I'm leading the witness, but it seems like just an ability to not even look at that first step as the challenge, which maybe that's something that we share. And then my toxic trait is I never think it's actually going to be that hard, and then I'm crying on the floor 6 months later.
Learn how hard it is.
Here's how hard it is, yeah. But it's evident in your story, from I barely know how to snowboard. Let's look up the best place in the world to go snowboarding and then just go. Or, I'm going to start the apparel sales and marketing. And I'm just going to walk into 48 stores. I'm going to get 46 orders. And, then starting Robot Food, same idea. So how do you manage this sickness of which I have? Because clearly you also started the Others Beauty Co. and you have Blind Ventures. And so what is it that when an idea comes into your head, what does that process normally look like for you, from going from this is something we should do to actually doing it?
Yeah, there's the first part here that is really important to kind of explain is, I think what you say no to is more important than what you actually say yes to and give a go at, because we have limited time, and stuff does come along all the time, and you've just got to be selective and understand where the opportunity is, I guess. And I don't know. I don't know what drives the things that then actually make you. It's excitement. I get a feeling, I guess, to outline the Others Beauty Co. is it came about because a potential client came to see us, and as an agency, he wanted advice on a brand that he had been selling into retail, and I don't think it really had legs. It was called Wingman, and it was this shower care brand for bros, and it was very kind of toxic masculinity in a bottle. It was looked a bit like Top Gun logo, but they did petrol scented shower gel and stuff. It was yeah, pretty basic.
Things that women love, clearly.
Yes. Clearly. But yeah, he's a really determined guy, and he'd kind of been flogging this horse for what was apparent was too long. And he said to me, what should I do with my brand? And I was like, honestly, I think you should probably give it up. This isn't the thing that you're going to succeed at, but I think that you're going to be a success. And, he had some investment, and I could have tried to take some money from him to do redesign in the, vain hope of it helping his career path. I like to be honest and upfront in the way I do business, and it served as well as an agency. But he took it really well, and at the time we had the concept within our portfolio, which was long-term skin for tattooed skin, and nobody had done it. And at the time, it was under the name like Under Your Skin, I think it was called, and we had mocked it up and shot it in the tattoo studio. It looked quite cool. But he was like, "What are you doing with this?" And I was like, "Well, nothing." He was like a dog with a bone. He just wouldn't let it go. In the end, he phoned me up and he was like, "I've got an order from a mass retailer. Do you want to fund it?" you know, it's down to just weighing up that opportunity. It's not going to be easy. This is a guy that's about 8 years younger than me, really determined, yet had proven success. And I could just see it in him that, this guy's going to work pretty hard.
Yeah.
If anyone can make it happen, it's Stu. That's how Stories and Ink came about.
And so how do you interweave these kind of side projects into Robot Food? Is it like you act as the agency? Is it resources from the agency are supporting? Do you bill from the Others Beauty Co. like a client to the agents? How does that all work?
It's really important to know where the boundaries are. It works seamlessly as far as I'm an advisor to Stories and Ink and the Others Beauty Co. I tend to speak to Stu outside of work hours as an advisory. Inside of work hours, we are the agency supplier, and I keep my hand in as far as, creative direction for my own brand. And we offer a discounted rate. So they are a paying customer, but they get the benefit, and we don't essentially need to make profit from that client.
Gotcha.
But as an agency, we have equity agreements with some clients where they get reduced fees in return for equity in their business. And I think, it's something that's always really interested me. I've seen how much value we add to some brands, and it makes sense to have skin in the game.
We could have a whole few episodes on this exact situation, because I'm constantly in the, like, when you have a skill set or when you have resources that can do a certain thing, you're always on this like, well, we could do that, we could get into business with X, Y, or Z. And I think we have in our history probably 5 or 6 attempts at like the Others Beauty Co. type of model. And what I recognize is where I've always gone wrong about it is that there was no stew. Is stew right? Yeah, there was no stew. It was always like I was also the stew. So, I think that is what, and it's interesting to hear you say, because I do think that is the missing piece, is like, it's yes, we have resources and a skill set and a process. And yes, we do this for other people, for much bigger brands every single day. So we could probably do this for ourselves. But I do think that without having that strong visionary kind of leader who is like the one banging down the doors and is going to put in the 60, 70 hours a week to make it happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And when I say I'm going to do it, I'll put in 10 hours a week into the thing, but it's not enough.
Yeah. You're over-egging your potential possibility as far as time, because that's the thing. Stu is, his superpower is not giving up. And I would have given up 10 times by now. So everyone needs a Stu.
Yeah. It's funny. I gave a presentation even before I started this business. I had another one, and I gave this presentation to a bunch of young people once, where I said, paycheck is like crack. It's, once you're on it, it's pretty hard to get off. And so sometimes you think as an entrepreneur that you're not on that model, but realistically, after, we've been in business about the same amount of time, you and I, like at this stage, I'm like, I'm fully on the on the crack. Like, taking entrepreneurial bets is like, I'm not going all in on black. It's like, it's calculated. What I hope people get away from, even you speaking about this, is the, like, in my experience, if you don't have the stew, it's not going to work. And in your experience, you have the stew and it's working. So
yeah, it depends where you are, I guess, because yeah, when I started Robot Food, I guess I was willing to go all in on black. It was that kind of shit or bust mentality. I really was paying both mine and my co-founder, who's no longer with the business, but I was paying both of our mortgages on my credit card, just thinking, if this doesn't work, at least we've given it a go.
Yeah.
And I
And
wouldn't be I wouldn't be prepared now to take that risk.
so that's more what I guess I was getting at, is that, like, yes, absolutely when you're starting out, but what I'm talking about is like agency people always have another idea. There's all, like, because you're creative by trade, so it's like there's always going to be an opportunity, an idea, whatever. And this is probably, like I said, one of my most toxic traits is, like, I see opportunity everywhere, and then when you have the resources and team and talents to take it to that next level, it can become, a challenge, because then what do you truly say yes to? What do you say no to? And I actually really like this idea. Even as you're speaking, remember I said when before we even started recording that I often get a lot out of these interviews. What I took from you is the, like, all right, Dave, you have never had an opportunity where it was a stew who came to you and you just had to play the advisory role and provide resources and maybe some capital or whatever. It's always been like, and another thing I'm going to do, which is like, well, no.
That's the most exciting thing about personal development, though, as a leader in the business. It's kind of like early days of Robot Food. I was across everything and micromanaging, and my team they'll say that I would have been a nightmare at that time because I couldn't let go of anything, because it meant so much, because we came from nothing, and because every step we made, every stepping stone client, everything meant so much. I was paying salaries, I was invoicing, I was being creative director, I was presenting, I was doing new biz
Yeah.
development. I was like doing every single aspect of the job from day one. So then when you employ people who are far better than you at certain aspects, it's very hard to give up that ultimate say. And I guess done that over a period of time, but not truly empowered people. And recently, in the past couple of years, we've had a complete change where we've got formation of a new senior leadership team, and these colleagues of mine, these long term colleagues who are helping me run the business, are literally running the business. They're making the decisions, and the buck stops with them. They're not now coming to me asking my opinion. And I don't know, in a way, it's scary, but it's the only thing that's going to allow us to step up to a level that ultimately I was holding us back from stepping up to.
Yeah, for sure. So, Simon, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you about the future? And you can take that any way you want. It's not actually meant to be an AI centric question. It's not meant to be, because I find it's gross. I mean, part of what we do is run an AI consultancy, which I think is gross. So, like, to be clear, like, I actually personally never even write anything AI generated content, whatever, because I'm like a purist when it comes to, like, well, if I'm going to write it, I'm going to write the thing. So anyway, all that backstop to say, when I ask you the question on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you about the future as an agency owner? You can take it any way you want. It does not have to be like is going to destroy our world point.
Yeah, I think if you had asked me a year to 2 years ago, I would have been pretty stressed about the future. I don't know about your market, but I imagine it's been fairly similar to ours in that there's been little or no growth for a couple of years, and certainly with global uncertainty, the the brands have been sitting on their hands waiting to see how things pan out, and there's been a lack of spend. So it's been tough, but because of what I've started to talk about with the senior leadership team, all of that came about because we needed to change. We needed to refocus the business. And I think the time was right. We've always been highly creative, but that isn't enough. It's not necessarily enough to attract the biggest A grade clients,
Mm-hmm.
because you also have to be safe, and you have to, in your judgment, they have to be able to lean on you for the right opinion, and you need to be able to deliver it in just the right way. And you need that breadth of structure within your organization that demonstrates that, that the business, for example, isn't completely reliant on you. And I brought in a brilliant non-exec chairman who's got super good, track history. More importantly, he's my kind of person. He's really straight talking. He swears more than I do, and he's really upbeat, optimistic, and has completely helped me to see what the future holds and actually where our true strengths are. And I mentioned it earlier in the fact that I'll always say it as it is. And some of the world's biggest organizations are wanting our opinions, and they're demanding that our positioning is challenged by design. And it's because we won't take a brief at face value. And what's happened in the market over the past few years, while it's been quite static, and while there hasn't been this splurge of spending, it's, I think, some of the big networked agencies been, I guess, placating marketeers, making them reinforcing their thinking and kind of selling back to them what they're hoping to hit and all this kind of stuff. And now that you've got some of the bigger organizations are now looking at change makers and bringing in design thinking and really, really putting value in creative. And because of that, this new breed of design leader, they're looking for different thinking, smaller agencies that aren't going to just deliver what they ask for. They're actually going to challenge their thinking, and they're going to, collaborate to produce better work. And yeah, all of this reshaping has resulted in us landing some really big global clients and working with some really cool people where it doesn't feel like a traditional an agency relationship. It feels like we are a natural extension of their team, and kind of working in real time, sharing work before it's fully formed and stuff like that. So our size and agility is our strength, and it's what's attracting some big players.
Well, I think that is a great note to end on. So Simon Forster, founder and executive creative director at the Leeds-based Robot Food. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we can do this again in a couple years, catch up, see where the journey has gone, what new bets you've made, what first steps you've taken, and yeah, thank you for adding to our agency ecosystem and being a fresh voice on our podcast today.
Dave, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it, and thanks so much for inviting me on. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Journey Map is hosted by me, Dave Hale, and produced by the website production company Craft&Crew. To learn more, visit us at craftandcrew.ca. Thanks for taking this journey with us.